Hello everybody, welcome to the Redmen TV. This is the 2017-18 loan rating show, the show where I, a guy who's been looking at the loanees all season, takes a good in-depth look at how their seasons have gone, how they've performed, the sort of stats that they've been putting in, and a little bit of whether they've got a future or not at Liverpool. We're going to rate every single loan out of 10, even the loans that I've not been discussing week in, week out on the Development Watch. I've done my research, I've had a look at them play, I've got a good sense of how that they've done this season at their club. I've spoken to some fans, we've got a good idea of how they're doing, and we're going to rate them as well. So strap yourself in. It's going to be a longer show than the average Development Watch this. That probably goes without saying. Strap yourself in, enjoy it. We're going to get on with it, and we're going to start with Naby Keita. Now, of course, I wasn't quite sure at first whether to include Naby Keita because obviously it's not technically a loan, but then I thought, you know what? I wouldn't want to miss an opportunity to give you another Keita countdown. So I've only gone and done it, haven't I? We're going to start with Naby Keita. 44 days until he finally puts on a Liverpool shirt. Feels like forever since we've been talking about this and counting down to it, but it's not very far at all. Not very far away at all now. The next game of football he plays will be for Liverpool, and it is 44 days until he's unveiling on July 1st. But let's talk about his season then. He's had a fantastic season in his final year at Leipzig. He's got 9 goals, 7 assists, and that is a great return. And he will add plenty of firepower to our midfield next season. There have been games this season, I've said this on the show all season, there have been games for Liverpool this year that they have struggled to find an extra bit of cutting edge in. You know, Man United away speaks to me. You know, I can remember that one. Swansea away as well. These games where you just need a little bit more drive in midfield. Naby Keita is definitely going to add that sort of thing to our midfield. He's done an excellent job this season of creating a great relationship with Timo Werner. It would be mental if we signed him too, but even if he doesn't, I'm convinced that Klopp has the man management skills to help him, you know, when he arrives, settle in well with the squad and try and start building up that kind of relationship with our front three as well. Because let's face it, the front three are all definitely going to stay. They're all definitely going to be in a Liverpool shirt next season, and we've got to try and make sure that Naby Keita is on the same wavelength with those three as he is with Timo Werner. Because if he gets that relationship right and they all click, that is going to be one hell of a combination next season with Keita in that number 8 role in the 4-3-3, bursting forward, playing balls forward for those front three. We're going to create so many chances. Look at the amount of chances he's created this season in all competitions. 37, it's ridiculous. He's creating chances all the time. We know that our front three, when they get chances, they more often than not take them. So I'm really excited about how Naby Keita is going to link up with our forward players. It would have been nice to have him in January, but the Leipzig fans absolutely loved him. They didn't let us have him in January for a premium, but he's coming this summer, and that is really good news for us. Now, I saw this on the other day. I'm going to put it on the screen now. I think it was the Anfield Wrap who posted it on Twitter. Somebody's ran through Naby Keita's stats with and compared him to some of the best midfielders in the Premier League. They've run it through Squawker's comparison matrix, and actually it gave me the idea to do that for another player in the show later on. But as we can see here, this is how he stacked up against some of the best Premier League midfielders this season. I think the Fernandinho comparison is a little bit off because I don't think that they're similar players. Now, next season, if we see a bit more of the 4-2-3-1 system that Klopp played against Brighton, where, you know, he perhaps plays another striker ahead of Firmino and he's playing 2 in midfield, that's where the comparisons with Fernandinho begin to ring true, because he'll be playing deep in Naby Keita alongside probably Jordan Henderson or another midfielder that we happen to sign, and he will be able to, you know, make a lot more tackles. He will be forced to do a lot more defensive work, but that's not what Naby Keita is. That isn't the type of style of player he is. We've been talking about all season about how Jose Mourinho has essentially wasted Paul Pogba by playing him in a deeper position. I've got Man United friends who get really frustrated at that, and you can see that the fact that Paul Pogba's not been playing in the position that he probably desires, that had an effect on him over the course of the season. You know, look at those stats compared to Keita. Keita blows everybody out the water. Dead belly there is a top player. So is Jordan Henderson. Fernandinho is a top player despite not having the same role. But the main one there to look at is Paul Pogba. And we're not even talking about fine margins with the majority of these stats. We're talking about absolutely blowing them away. Look at the key passes. Look at the interceptions. Look at the tackles won. That's how much of a more rounded player Naby Keita is. He does everything when compared to these players, and I just think we are so lucky to be getting such a good midfielder for essentially a fraction of the prices that he's actually worth. You know, in today's market, we've absolutely taken him for a snip, haven't we? Because he should be worth 80-90 million in this market. If Paul Pogba's worth 90 million, how much is Naby Keita worth with those stats? But like I say, absolutely outstanding. That's how he's been against Premier League midfielders this season. There is stat, and that's Naby Keita, and I'm rating him an 8 out of 10 for his season with Leipzig. He could have done a little bit better if he perhaps helped this team get into the Champions League, if they'd perhaps gone a little bit further in the Europa League run, but on an individual season, he's been absolutely outstanding. Okay, moving on to loanee number 2, and we're going to talk about Lars Markovic, who spent the majority of the back end of this season in Belgium for RSC Anderlecht, out on loan there. He had a bumpy start as he was basically deemed too overweight and too unfit to play upon it when he arrived, and fans actually thought it was a joke. They didn't want him at all. They hated the fact that their club had signed him. But credit to Lars Markovic, I don't think he's got a future at Liverpool, but he did turn that round. He won over the fans eventually, and he's put in a relatively good second half of the season, provided that he was too unfit to play when he arrived. As we can see, 8 appearances, 5 starts, 429 minutes played. He got a goal and assist in that time. It's not a bad return at all. I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10 purely because of the way he's managed to turn the opinions of the fans round. A lot of Belgian journalists are saying that he's improved as well, which is always good. You know, I don't get the chance to watch the Belgian league every week because I've got a life, but if Belgian journalists, obviously experts in that field, are talking that he's doing really well for himself, then that's clearly a good thing. He said he has been quite inconsistent, but so have Anderlecht as a team, and it's difficult to be a consistent individual when the team are having a inconsistent season themselves. So overall, I think Lars Markovic has probably done the best he can there. He's actually wanted on a permanent deal by Anderlecht, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if that permanent deal went through this summer and we got a little bit of money for him. You're probably looking at 10, 15 million for him tops. So yeah, there you go. There is Lars Markovic's season in a lovely nutshell, and we'll move on. Ovie Ejaria then, we'll move on to him. He got a lot of game time for Sunderland, but it was very difficult for him to make a positive impact in such a weak side. I actually filmed a show with Andy Kelly this morning, which is going on the website. There's going to be a snippet, I think, of YouTube discussing the youth season, you know, the other side of the development watch, really, how the youth academy sides have done. And we talked about Ovie Ejaria a little bit and how I feel that it was quite a clever move sending him to Sunderland because there wasn't really a lot of pressure on him there. Nobody was ever going to expect him to come and save their season. He's a 19-year-old kid who plays centre midfield, for God's sakes. Nobody was going to expect him to come in and completely change everything at Sunderland, change the morale at the club. And I think it's actually quite clever sending him to a move where the morale of the club is very down. You know, they weren't doing very well at all, and what it allowed him to do was just get by and sort of do his own business in the background and get some minutes on the pitch. He scored himself a goal on the last day of the season, and I think it's really good for him to get some senior experience, and hopefully he might even learn from the hurt that's come from getting relegated, because, you know, he's not attached to that club, but he spent a lot of time there. He's gotten to know the fans a little bit, and I'm sure that he's disappointed that the club have ended up getting relegated to League One, so hopefully that's all a good learning curve for him. But overall, I think I give him a 5, just purely because there's not much he can do about the fact that they've got relegated. You know, it's not necessarily his fault. They were probably down. They were on the way down when he arrived anyway. And I just think overall it's actually quite a clever move from Liverpool to send him there, because I think if he was going to get any senior experience, you're better off sending him to a club where there isn't that much pressure on when they're at that sort of age. So yeah, overall, Ovie Ejaria, thumbs up. I think he's going to be in the pre-season squad. He's out in Marbella at the moment with the first team squad. Jurgen Klopp clearly likes him, and I think he's probably got a future at Liverpool. Okay, let's move on to Daniel Sturridge, and this is possibly the worst loan I've ever seen in my life. Daniel Sturridge has had an absolute torrid time at West Brom. He played a total of 116 minutes, so not even 2 full games. It's the story of Daniel Sturridge's career, essentially. Got there, got himself settled in. He had a couple of games. He made a start against Southampton where he played an hour. Had another big start away at his old club Chelsea, looking to make an impact. West Brom, fighting for survival. Got injured after 4 minutes. And if that doesn't sum up Danny Sturridge's career, I don't know what does. So I do feel really sorry for him. On top of all that, he got himself relegated. No goals, no assists. Injured for 6 weeks, just an absolute nightmare, and that's why I've given it a 1 out of 10, as you can see there. It just wasn't any good for him at all. I really think we'll struggle to get any money for him at all this summer. We might just have to loan him out, let his contract run down and go. I highly doubt anybody would want to invest any money in the liability that is Daniel Sturridge, because that's essentially what I feel like he is at the moment. There is no faith whatsoever that he is going to be able to give you a run of 10 games in your side, because he's just always injured, and it must be so frustrating for him, because obviously it's World Cup year. He's good enough. He's a good enough striker to be in that England squad. He's better than Danny Welbeck. Let's be honest with ourselves. But he just cannot play enough games and be consistent enough to get into that squad. It must be so frustrating for him, and fair enough. I don't know what he's going to do post-Liverpool, but he almost certainly has no future at Liverpool, unfortunately. Moving on to John Flanagan. Now, John Flanagan was the loanee that I asked everybody to tell me if they cared about him or not, given the off-the-pitch problems that he's had this season. He needed to perform exceptionally well at Bolton to save his Liverpool career, and he unfortunately did quite the opposite. Now, I've got a good friend who's a Bolton fan. I've been able to chat to him quite in depth about John Flanagan, how he's performed. Basically, he had one excellent game earlier in this season when kind of around the time it got really cold in the country, because I remember watching the highlights and it was pelting down with snow. It was against promotion candidates Aston Villa. Other than that, though, he was very, very poor. He didn't win the fans over at all, and essentially he couldn't get into the starting 11 of a team who survived championship relegation on the last day, and I think that speaks volumes. He got caught out of position a lot. There are better right backs quite easily in that Bolton Wanderers side, according to my friend. And I stopped talking about him because no one cared. He will almost definitely be sold in the summer. I'm going to give him a 3 out of 10. That's probably a bit generous even, because they kept themselves up on the last day even though he wasn't involved, and he did that one good game where apparently he was excellent. But other than that, the stats don't impress you. 5 out of 10 is probably a worthy score. Another player who's had arguably an underwhelming season is Ryan Kent. Now, obviously, in pre-season, everybody was buzzing about this guy. All the noise was just how good Ryan Kent was. Can't wait to have Ryan Kent in our squad full-time. And he did enough in pre-season to justify that hype. He was doing really well. I remember in the Bayern Munich game, he came on. He did some really good stuff. Everybody seemed to be really impressed with him. And he needed the loan spell that he had initially to go really well for him to get some game time, and eventually, looking into next season, start to get some minutes under Jurgen Klopp. Unfortunately, he ended up having 2 loan spells because the first one in Freiburg in Germany just wasn't very successful at all. He got very little game time, 6 appearances, and Liverpool, on the back of the lack of minutes he was getting, decided to end it early for the sake of his season, essentially. Back out in January, he was loaned again. He was sent to Bristol City, this time in England, where he made a relatively bright start. He did okay, he got a couple of assists in the first few games, but by the end of the season, he was out of the squad more than he was in. He'd fallen out of favour, and actually, Bristol City's manager Lee Johnson gave an honest account recently of how he think the signing went. And this is what he said. He said, "I think Ryan Kent was a young lad coming through, probably unfit because of his time in Germany, or not as fit as he could have been. We had hoped that he would have hit the ground running a bit quicker than he did. He probably wasn't helped by the atmosphere which was created in the stadium by a couple of losses, a couple of poor performances." And that I suppose is a fair and honest assessment, but I think what he's missing out there is that there was a lot of positivity going around with Bristol City as well this season. They made a Capital One Cup semi-final, or whatever it's called these days, EFL Cup, and they went and played perhaps the biggest game in their recent history against Man United and won that, and everybody was lifted. And then obviously they played Man City in the 2 legs as well, where Kent featured a little bit. So it wasn't all negativity surrounding the club, but it just seemed to fizzle out. His form, he never really found form properly. He was being used in different positions. I remember watching him against, it might have been Bolton actually, where he played out on the right for a bit and then down the centre, and he was being moved about a lot. And I think a player like that needs consistency. He needs to know exactly where he's playing, exactly what's being asked of him, and that's when you're going to get performances out of it. And Ryan Kent didn't quite have that opportunity this season to know exactly what he was doing. So overall, I'm going to give him a 3 again, just purely because he's really struggled. He didn't really have the game time at all in Germany, couldn't really rate him at all, and then obviously he's fallen out of favour at Bristol, and that's why I'm giving the rating that I'm giving. So overall, Ryan Kent, I think he'll go again this summer. I don't think we'll get rid of him permanently. I think he will probably be going on the pre-season squad. I think he's destined for another loan, to be honest. Right, we've had a couple of difficult loan spells in a row now, so I'm going to bring you a more positive one. We're going to talk about Marco Grujic, who's had a fantastic spell under Neil Warnock at Cardiff City. Really couldn't have asked any more from him. When it came to Christmas, we were all wondering, does Marco Grujic have a long-term future at Liverpool? He wasn't really getting in the game in the squad at all for any of the match days. And actually, the irony of all this is that he probably would have got a little bit more game time towards the end of the season, given the injuries that we picked up. But nevertheless, this was probably better for him. He made 14 appearances at Cardiff, including 12 starts. He's been fantastic. He has only had one real poor moment, which was away at Brentford, where he gave a goal away. But even Neil Warnock admitted that it's a learning curve. He's got to have these experiences to be able to be a top player, and it's one of them that he's going to learn from. All in all, he helped Cardiff get promoted. He was a big player for them in the back end of this season, and that really is a big achievement. He could easily have a future at Liverpool. Football Journal journalist and Cardiff fan Daniel Lewis believes he will go down in Cardiff folklore, and he benefited from regular playing time, improving as he went along. Cardiff only lost one game when he was on the pitch, so he must have been doing something right, and I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 because I think he's had one of the best loan seasons out of all these players that we're talking about today. I think he's been absolutely outstanding. I think he'll be on the plane to America in the summer when it comes to the pre-season tour. That's absolutely fantastic news. He's got a future at Liverpool, I think, and I'd be interested to see how that pans out over the next few years. Another central midfield then, Alan Rodriguez de Souza, or if you watched the show a few weeks back where I accidentally called him a winger, I heard he doubles up as that too. No, I'm joking. He's a central midfielder. For those who don't know him, this is one of the loan signings that I haven't been talking about as consistently over the course of the season, just purely because it's unlikely that he will actually play for us in the future for a various amount of reasons. For those who are aware of the work permit rules, I'll run through them in a second. But for those who don't know him as well, he's a central midfielder, left-footed with a good passing range. He also is a good box-to-box player. He's also played this season for Apollon Limassol as a deep-line playmaker. His loan was cut short because he had to have shoulder surgery. And Liverpool made the decision to cut the loan short when he got injured. But he did have quite a good season. You know, he made 20 appearances, 15 starts. A relatively good season. You know, I think they were expecting a little bit more out of him just for the type of player that he is, but he still won't have a work permit in 2018-19. For those who don't know, the work permit rules changed in 2015, and points that go towards that are for various criteria, including transfer fee, wages, minutes on the pitch, and mainly international caps. Unfortunately, he's not really getting anywhere near the Brazil squad at the moment, and that is a big problem. However, people seem to think that one more loan next season will grant him the right amount of points to go towards that work permit, and hopefully in 2019-2020, we might have a chance of seeing him in the Liverpool squad, but I'm not quite sure. I know Klopp really likes him, so it'll be interesting to see how hard Liverpool battle to keep hold of him. I don't know whether eventually, as we sign more quality in the midfield, he'll just become too much of a problem and we'll just sell him on permanently. I hope that's not the case though, because from what I've seen, he does look like quite a good player. I can only assume that the reason he's not getting this work permit is because he's not getting the international experience and things like that. So for now, he's doing okay. He's had an okay season out in Apollon Limassol. I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10 just purely because I think he's had an average season, and 6 out of 10 is pretty much an average score. Again, it's not one of them that I've been paying that closely attention to this season, but I'm giving you all the information that I've found out over the last few days while researching for this show. Up to Scotland then, and we'll talk about right-back Conor Randall, who's been a consistent feature for Hearts this season. He's had a relatively good season there. He's played both as a right midfielder and a right-back, but he's been better at right-back, which is obviously his natural position. That's the position that we've seen him in the rare occasions where he's worn a Liverpool shirt. He's impressed at the Scottish Premiership level, but their fans aren't convinced that he'd be able to replicate it in the Premier League. Thanks to a view from Georgie, by the way, on Twitter, who are a Hearts fan page. I did a bit of a conversation with them yesterday through the Redmen account, helping gather opinion from Hearts fans about how Conor Randall's done. They think that he's been much better in that right-back position. They know way better than me. They said early in the season that he can see himself staying permanently, but the Hearts fans are pretty well covered for right-back, so it's unlikely that they'll make that move unless they're really convinced that he can make it as a right midfielder as well, and the fans aren't really convinced that that's going to be the case. So it might be looking that if he's going to be sold, which to be honest I think he will, I don't think Liverpool will keep hold of him, it probably won't be to Hearts, it'll be elsewhere. But overall, he's had a pretty good season. Obviously, it's 27 appearances. He must be doing something right to get in that team so consistently. He's got himself 2 assists. I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. And on to another midfielder, Pedro Chirivella, another player that I've had a good discussion with a Willem 2 fan about this season, about his performances for them. He's been a very consistent figure for them. He's played 35 appearances, 34 starts. He's not a player who really takes the headlines over there because of the role that he plays. He's very much a deep-lying central midfielder who's very good on the ball. As you can see there, his pass success rate is very good. Just links everything up. He's that kind of player. He's got 4 assists this season as well. That's exactly what you'd want from your holding midfielder, really. A good opportunity to keep the ball and don't give away possession. He's had his sloppy moments, but he's overall very comfortable in possession. And according to @FootyGraphic on Twitter, who's a Willem 2 fan that I asked about him, he's not at the level we should be looking for. However, he's generally well appreciated by fans, and the general consensus is that if the club can afford him, which they're not sure that they can, they take him on a permanent deal. he's been quite good for them this season. He's been quite crucial for them in terms of they've been in a relegation battle in the Eredivisie, and he's been quite important to them in staying up. So overall, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. Pretty good season from good old Pedro, and if he does get sold in the summer, obviously I do wish him well. 4 more loanees to go then, and then we're going to talk about Divock Origi, a player who really we wanted him to show more from this loan spell. He was hampered right away from the fact that basically the manager who signed him very close to the end of the summer transfer window was sacked very quickly after he arrived. So obviously all the plans then for the season go out of the window. A new manager comes in with all sorts of new ideas, and Divock's kind of caught up in the middle of it all, which it is a shame. And despite all that, he started very well, scoring 4 goals in his first 11 games. He was looking quite good. But the problem is the Wolfsburg side isn't very good at the moment. You know, they're battling to stay up. They're in a relegation playoff, which I'll get onto in a second. And he quickly fell off the pace. He didn't score at all from November to February. He was in and out the team. He was coming off a lot. He was very rare. He was completing 90 minutes. The fans weren't impressed with him, and the low point was probably being subbed off in the first half versus Hoffenheim earlier on in the season for a tactical reason, nothing to do with injury. He was just having such a poor performance that he was brought off, and then for the next game he was dropped. So he's had a real low point in the season. And overall, it's probably a good experience to have, but it's not the most promising thing to hear when you want to hear about how well Liverpool's potential backup striker is scoring goals in one of Europe's top 5 leagues, and he's just not been at all. However, he has found a little bit of form recently. He scored a crucial goal on the final day of the regular Bundesliga season, which could potentially keep them up. They beat who did they beat? They beat FC Cologne 4-1, and that meant that they play a relegation playoff against Holstein Kiel. The first leg of that was last night, which they won 3-1. Divock scored and assisted, and I had planned this show, and last night I was up so late planning this show, and I planned it all, and I was ready to talk about how he's had a really bad season overall. He's not fulfilled the potential, and then he went in and put a great performance last night. I was like, for fuck's sake, Divock. So currently I'm going to keep his rating at a 4 out of 10, but that will be a 5 if they stay up, which I imagine they probably will now with another leg to go, which is in a couple of days. But I'm going to give him a 4/5 out of 10 if he can manage to keep Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga, which I imagine they will now. Moving on to another striker then, it's Tyronne Weeks. The man's new name I cannot pronounce, but we're just going to plough through. He's played for Royal XL Mouscron this season out in Belgium, same league as Lars Markovic, but he's been out there for the whole year. He's possibly been one of the most impressive loan spells for Liverpool this season. He got injured in April, which cut his season slightly short, and also he missed out on an opportunity to represent Nigeria. That may affect his first team prospects, unfortunately. That's life, that's football, and that becomes more significant when I talk about that a little bit later on. He got a decent goal return, but he's been described as wasteful in front of goal. Now the thing is with the Belgian league, right? I've been trying to get me in-depth stats. For quite a few of these players, you can find pass completion rate and all those sort of nitty-gritty stats that you really can get a sense of how they are. I read an article and on several websites that he's been quite wasteful in front of goal, and I couldn't for the life of me find like a chance conversion rate or a shot conversion rate stat or something like that, just because it's the Belgian league. If anybody knows where to find those sort of stats for the Belgian league, please tell me in the comments, because I'd really love to be able to bring you a little bit more information about how he's done and whether he is indeed wasteful in front of goal, but I couldn't find him anywhere. But anyway, he also has a work permit problem, and the injury and therefore the lack of international chances are being, his big problem. But he's definitely going to be loaned again next season, probably to somewhere in Europe's top 5 leagues, maybe to a German side, Italian side, whatever. That's now the next challenge for him. He's done it in the Belgian league. Nobody cares about the Belgian league, unfortunately. He's done quite well, but he needs to do it for a top club or a team in one of the top 5 leagues. And long term, it looks as if we do want him on our books because we want to get him tied down to a new contract before he goes out on loan again. And he appears to be closer to gaining that work permit than Alex Rodriguez is, a player we've already discussed. But yeah, getting the injury in April meant that he missed out on an opportunity to play for Nigeria against Serbia, a friendly that took place actually in this country a little bit back. And that meant that he's obviously not getting those international points towards the work permit, and that's just going to delay his chances of getting in the first team even more. So unfortunately, that has been a sad season-ending injury for him, but I'm sure that he's got potentially a future at Liverpool. I think he's definitely destined for another loan, but long-term, we'll wait and see. I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10. Shea Ojo then, and a man who started the season well, but a shoulder injury and then a bit of bad luck means that he's had quite an inconsistent season really for Fulham. He's played 24 appearances, made 19 starts, which is obviously just over half of the games that he's appeared for Fulham. The major problem that he had was he got himself injured. He was playing left wing, and unluckily for him, when he went out the team, Fulham decided to push an upcoming left back, Ryan Sessegnon, up to left wing, and then he kind of did really well, and he got himself nominated for a PFA Young Player of the Year. Yeah, that kid. And unfortunately, that's kind of kept Ojo out the side, because now they're just preferencing playing Ryan Sessegnon up there because he's just dead quick, dead good in front of goals, scores loads for them. He scored for them in the playoff the other day against Derby, and now he's probably going to start for them in the playoff final as well. So really unlucky there for Shea Ojo. He picked up another injury in January that kept him out for another month, and then he just couldn't really build up any momentum. He ended up falling out of favour by March, featuring in only one of the last 8 championship games, and he didn't appear in those games versus Derby in the playoffs either, although it may have been that his loan had expired by then, and that's why I'm not quite sure when it actually ends. Fans haven't been too impressed, but a lot of that is down to the hype surrounding Sessegnon. He's just got really unlucky. Whether Sessegnon would have kicked on quite as much if he'd been a bit more consistent in the team, he hadn't got that injury, I don't know. Probably yes, because I think everybody had spotted the potential of Ryan Sessegnon before this season anyway. It's just been quite unlucky for Shea Ojo the way his season's panned out. I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10 because he hasn't had a great season. It isn't necessarily his fault. Injuries happen, and you know, how often can you predict a 17-year-old kid being one of the best players in the fucking country and potentially being called up to England squads? You know, it happens once every generation. So that's the way I'm sort of assessing Shea Ojo's season. He'll probably go to pre-season as well. I think he'll probably be looking at loaning him again next season, Jurgen Klopp, but we'll wait and see. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I saved the best loan to last, our most successful loan of the season, if you ask me, Harry Wilson, who's been on loan at Hull City since January. Again, on the show I did with Andy Kelly this morning, we discussed the impact of Neil Critchley losing players like Harry Wilson, how that affected the under-23s progress in their league. But the most important thing for players like Harry Wilson is that they are getting the challenge that they need for their ability at this point. Harry Wilson has been absolutely outstanding. He has risen to the challenge of the Championship. It is not an easy league. It's probably the best second-tier division in the world when it comes to, you know, top football, and he has risen to that challenge. Hull City were in relegation trouble when he arrived, and he has well and truly helped guide them away from that sort of trouble that they were looking at getting in, and he is absolutely desperate to get a chance in the first team now. I absolutely love his attitude. He knows that we have the best front three in the world. I'm going to come out and say it. It's the best front three in the world, yet he wants to break into it. He believes that he can break into it, and that's what I love so much about Harry Wilson. And again, like Naby Keita, I've compared him with some of the other top Championship wingers from 17-18, and here are the comparisons right now. So as you can see, it was a bit unfair. He's played significantly less games, but it would be a bit unfair to do the totals for all these stats purely because, you know, he hasn't gone anywhere near the rest of these wingers in terms of game time. But if we convert all the stats to per 90, he's actually very close to the rest of them. There's a lot of potential there for how good he's actually been. The best sort of example, really, probably the best winger in the Championship this season has been Ivan Cavalier, and that shows clearly. He's the orange one there. But you've got an interesting one there because he's scored the most goals per 90. He's come very close with the shot accuracy and the key passes. And it's very interesting to see that that's what he's doing. The point really is that with this is that we are comparing him to some of the top players who played in his league this season, and he's not too far away from them, and that proves that he really has got potential. If he comes into this Liverpool side, which he definitely will in pre-season, if he stays, which I really hope he does, I really hope he isn't loaned out again. There will be game time for him next season, definitely. We're going to be back in the EFL Cup, back in the FA Cup in January. He is going to get game time, and I'm really excited to see what he can do. As you can see, 17 chances created. That is a lot. That is a lot for a winger, and I think he will kick on with this Liverpool side. The pre-season couldn't be coming at a better time for him because now he's going to be around top quality players. If fingers crossed, if things go well, Champions League winners. He's going to have a pre-season with a load of European Cup winners who've gone out and won the biggest club competition possible. And what better way to prepare for a season as a 21, 22-year-old? So yeah, as I say, absolutely outstanding season from Harry Wilson. Going to rate him 10 out of 10. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your roundup of all the loanees this season. Thank you very much for watching. My name's been Ben Kelly. Do all the usual good stuff that you do anyway. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave me a comment. Follow me on Twitter at bkelly776. I'll be back in August with new development watch. I'll be back over the summer with bits of World Cup stuff and things like that. So keep an eye. Go and watch the youth review with Andy Kelly. It's going to be on the website. Little snippet's going to be on YouTube. It's a really, really good show. Andy Kelly's just absolutely brilliant. It gives you all the detail on the youth stuff that you could possibly dream of hearing. Again, thanks for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.